So it's been a little minute, but we are back for more of the 2024 Wolverine series, with the return of Logan's mother, Elizabeth Howlett, in addition to some others who have also been dead for quite some time. So with that said, I got a link in the description for the full playlist for anyone who needs to get caught up. And if you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so coming back, I do want to do a really quick recap because it's been a while. But going back to the start of this series, we picked up with Logan, who had taken some time to clear his mind after Fall of X, which led to him, getting in his birthday suit and running with the wolves, which is what he does from time to time, only to eventually run into Cyber, who was just bodying people at random, and I'm talking about rangers, civilians, and even the wildlife in some cases. And now this eventually got the attention of Department H, who at this point believed that Logan was the person doing all this killing, and that he was the wilderness killer, which is what the unknown killer was called at this time, with them not knowing that it was actually Cyber. But aside from this, when Wolverine confronted Cyber, and the two of them had their adamantium clinging and pinging all throughout the Canadian wilderness, this ended up causing the return of adamantine. And since we already went into depth with all this with our coverage, so I won't spend too much time on it here, but for now, just know that this started a story arc that lasted all the way through to issue 8, where this metal chose Wolverine to be its champion, only for Logan to turn it down. So it left Logan telling him that it's going to spend some time in this new age, so he can learn what it is to live in it and to kill in it, before it would return to him. So for the time being, the adamantine conflict is more or less put on hold. And now aside from this, there was also the kid Leonard who had fell under the Wendigo curse that Logan was looking after, who was eventually able to overcome it and become human again. And at the time, this seemed like something that would just come and go. But as it turns out, during Leonard's time as a Wendigo, when Logan was helping the kid to resist the animal urges, it reminded him a lot of himself. And later on, when Logan took Leonard back to his mother, not only did it have him thinking about how much every kid needs their mom, but it also had Logan thinking about how he never had this kind of experience with his mother, which in a lot of ways was setting us up for what was to come next. Because after Logan left, he thought he was going to get some quiet time so he could wind down and figure out his next move as far as what to do with the adamantine situation, before he came back looking for him. But instead, it was during this time where he got a mysterious visitor with no scent, so Logan couldn't pick up who it was, who had came to his motel door and dropped off a note that addressed him by the name of James, with it being a letter from his mother, who was thought to be long dead, asking for his help, with the letter smelling like the very first scent that Logan had ever taken in. So now this takes us over to a couple days later at a bar, with a couple of guys having a conversation where one of these guys is going on about how he's tired of hearing about muties, and how they're all you see on the news, their costumes, their code names, and how he just thinks they're weird. But his friend just stops him mid-sentence to tell him they're called mutants. Mutie is a slur, but dude just goes off again like that's what I'm talking about, telling us how to talk, how to think, and he goes on about how he doesn't know all the politically correct terms because he's an old school prairie boy, but his friend just shuts it down again because he's like, old school? First of all, you're 28. And he tells him, I grew up here same as you. And he's like, you can be an ignorant jackass if you want, but you don't get to blame it on the whole town. And man, this whole conversation is just hilarious. But if you notice here, Logan is at the bar, and he definitely hears this conversation, but of course he has other things on his mind, with one of those things being how does he keep ending up in scuzzy bars like this one. But nonetheless, he does his best to not pay attention to this crazy conversation and focus at the task at hand, because 2 days ago, he got a letter from his mother who's been dead for over a century after deleting herself because she believes she gave birth to a monster, with that monster being Logan. And just looking at this at face value, Logan's like, okay, this is about as obvious as traps come, and here I am walking right into it. A 19th century style calling card was enclosed with the letter, instructions to meet at Howlett Estate, our family home, a place I'd hoped like hell never to see again. But with Logan very much being in his head about all of this, he doesn't notice the loudmouth guy from the other side of the bar approaching him until he gets closer. And this dude has the nerve to say, hold on, midget over here is eavesdropping on us. And he's like, hey, this is a private conversation, pal. And I'm just like, yo, this dude with the name calling. Like, I can only imagine what else he'd be saying out here. But he steps up to Logan like, hey, this is a private conversation, pal. And that's where Logan tells him, then have it at a private volume, bub. And that's when he looks at his friend Scotty like, you hear this guy? But Scotty ain't going for it. He's like, you kidding me, right? Are you seriously trying to drag me into a bar fight? Some of us have to work tomorrow. So the dude gets up in Logan's face, calls him chicken. And I mean, it's a good thing that Logan's not Marty McFly with claws, But he gets up in Logan's face like, you keep peeping over here. So what's your problem? Only for Logan to hit him with this creepy smile and be like, no problem here, bub. Just another happy drunk. See, I'm smiling and everything. You really want to see what happens when I stop smiling? And that's where dude wises up a little bit. He's like, you know what? I don't want none of this. Cause truly Wolverine wouldn't even have to pop claws, cause with every hit you're gonna feel that adamantium in those punches. But following this, Logan pays for his drinks and he heads out. But he's like, man, if I'm being honest, I'm rankled. And Logan knows that it's not so much the case of the guy inside being a jerk, cause any mutant who can pass for a human has overheard things like that plenty of times. But for Logan, it's the fact that he had to fight so hard not to let out the beast. Cause we saw the situation before with Leonard when Logan was helping the kid do the same thing, which gave Logan a look in the mirror in some moments. And aside from that, when Nightcrawler came looking for him, that eventually led to Logan leaving the wilderness and reconnecting with the X-Men. But even still, he doesn't understand why the animal inside of him is still so close to the surface. But just before Logan's able to get into his truck, he notices that he's not alone. So he looks over his shoulder and he's like, next time you set up an ambush, leave the frat boy body spray at home. Because as it turns out, now he's surrounded by Department H. But this time, instead of them just attacking, one of them kindly asks, like, James Howlett, codename Wolverine, come with us please, which isn't anything like what we've seen from these guys. And at first Logan's like, okay, sure, y'all learned some manners, but he goes on to tell him that he doesn't have time to answer any dumb questions about murders that he didn't commit, which again goes back to the whole wilderness killer thing that was actually Cyber, though reports in the area made it sound like it was Wolverine. So one of these guys approached Logan like, no, that's not what this is about. We know you're not the wilderness killer. Our boss just wants to talk. And that's where Logan's like, you know I can smell the idiot trying to sneak up on me while you talk nice, don't you? And it's like, even we can see this dude creeping up behind the truck just before Logan turns around and cracks this guy. And now I'm trying to tell you, man, I feel like I've said it a lot of times, so I might sound like a broken record, but these adamantium hands ain't nothing to play with, because the adamantium in his hands alone, it's heavy enough and hard enough to put most people down with one hit. So Logan intentionally handles this without popping claws, and not so much for the reason of going easy on them, but it's literally because Logan needs to show himself that he's still in control. But even now, he can't help but to wonder why these guys are even here. Because last time Department H came after him, it was a case of mistaken identity, but this time around they specifically came looking for him. So he's curious about why. But of course things got out of hand when they tried to pull a fast one on him. But just after Logan's done wrecking these guys, he's approached by a familiar face, who at first he acknowledges as Agent Meta, who we originally saw back in issue 2, but more notably in issue 3, when she was the first to catch up to Logan. Back when Department H thought he was the wilderness killer, this is where Logan filled her in about the killer being Cyber, in addition to letting her know where she can find one of their missing agents. So yeah, with Logan giving her all of that information, this got her promoted from agent to inspector. So now she's come here to really just have a talk with him. And it's funny because for a moment Logan starts to walk off, so she asks if he can spare a few minutes for his country. And right there Logan's like, my country's already taken lifetimes for me, kid. Like, really, spare a few minutes for your country? Then when she tries to stop him from driving since she knows he's been drinking, Logan just tells her I'm sober as a judge. Then she's like, right, your healing factor. RIP to your buzz, my condolences. But long story short, she'd come here to tell Logan that she'd been assigned to keep tabs on him, and because of that she wanted to properly introduce herself, and she figured she might as well be forward about it by approaching him directly and saying it to his face, because usually when people try to sneak up on Logan, things don't go too well for them. So after hearing this, Logan's just like, alright, fair enough. And all he asks for in return is that she stay out of his way, respectfully, because he has some private business he needs to take care of, and he'd appreciate the space. So from here, Logan makes his way straight out to the old Howlett estate, which is a long drive, and he describes it as the kind of drive that has you thinking about the things you don't want to think about, which for Logan spans across a number of things, from being ripped to pieces by monsters, abducted and experimented on, dying and coming back, plenty of times, and how that compares to growing up without a mother, which I could just imagine made the ride feel 10 times longer. And by the time he arrives at the old Howlett estate, it's dark outside, which is fine for Logan since he can see better than most in the dark. And in a strange way, he kind of prefers it like this, because for a moment he's like, the last thing my mood needs right now is the full-blown sunlit view of the house I grew up in. But for a place that's been abandoned and fallen apart for years, oddly enough, there's a light on in the window. So right here, Logan's like, maybe I can get some answers from the people trying to kill me, right as he catches a surprise attack from Harpoon and Vertigo, who are both part of the original Marauders team, who Logan describes as a mercenary gang of mutants who love their job too much. And Logan hasn't seen these two for a while, so the fact that they're here says 3 things, with one being someone had to have sent them, and the second being with them cutting the small talk, they're definitely out to kill, and the third we'll come back around to in a moment. But to handle these guys, Logan quickly goes for Harpoon, because he's like, dude's a glass cannon, so get him out of here. But by going for Harpoon, this leaves him open to an attack from Vertigo, where in her case, her powers allow her to throw people off balance, make them dizzy and disoriented, and Logan's very familiar with her, so he knows how this goes. But along with that, he also knows if he waits it out, his healing factor will catch up. And that's exactly what happens, because when it does, he takes her down. And the last thing that this tells Logan, it's based on the fact that he knows that there's only one man connected to the old Marauder crew who would also know Logan well enough to send them here. And as soon as he picks up the scent of that one man, he takes off running towards the estate, and the scent grows stronger. So Logan's like, this is the scent of my hate made flesh, the scent of someone who's taken everything from me again and again, the scent of a man who doesn't know how to stay dead, and that of course is the scent of Sabretooth. So Logan continues to make his way inside, and as he does, he thinks about how he's lived a long life, and over the years he's done a lot of recon, where a number of times before he's had to case a murderer's hideout. But this time around it's very different than any of the others, because Sabretooth is as bloodthirsty as they get, and the hideout is Logan's childhood home. And to make things even more complicated, Logan knows that Sabretooth is supposed to be dead, because he killed him at the end of the 2020 Wolverine series. So now it's like when you combine that with the addition of Logan's mom returning, especially with how she died, this takes a situation that Logan would usually be really good at, and it complicates it like crazy because he's so emotionally invested. But even still, when he climbs in through the window, Logan makes sure to be extra careful, because there's no telling who else is waiting for him after Harpoon and Vertigo, because there could be other marauders or armed guards, who knows. But when he goes inside, it's dead quiet, and right away he's hit with a number of different scents, where on the surface you have what you would expect to smell in a place that's been abandoned for over 100 years as far as squirrel fur and bird crap, but underneath those expected smells, Logan picks up the familiar scent of the walls, of the floors, the stone foundation, and it all immediately takes him back to his childhood, which even now after all these years causes him to feel a little weak and afraid again. And he even says here, it's so overwhelming, it takes a moment before I catch another, fainter scent, coming from somewhere deeper inside. And then I'm really a mess, because now of course he's picked up the scent of his mother. And Logan says here, it doesn't cut it to say a familiar scent compels me down that hall. It's way beyond that. Sight isn't our first sense. When we're born, we can't yet see properly, but scent is with us from the very beginning. And I've known this scent since before I can form words. I put my mother's name to it, sure, but really it smells like a part of myself, a part that has been missing for over 100 years. So hypnotic, so unignorable. And once again, all of this has Logan so distracted to where he's not really paying attention to his surroundings, and that gets him popped in the back of the head with a crowbar, which of course makes that metal hitting metal sound. But before Logan even turns around to see this guy's face, he picks up his scent. So right away Logan knows that this is the same dude from the bar who was trying to start a fight with him earlier. And on one hand, it's crazy to see that this guy drove all the way out here, because we know Logan drove quite some distance to get out to Western Canada, out here to the Howlett estate. But as soon as Logan takes this guy down, he just goes on like, please, I'm sorry. He made me. He has my sister. He'll kill her if I don't do what he says. And this is where Logan realizes that Sabretooth sent this guy out here after taking his sister hostage. And one of the things you gotta love about Logan is like, he looks at this guy like, okay, he might be some loudmouth, mutant bashing piece of trash, you egg sucking piece of gutter trash. Like, this guy might be a jerk, but even still, Logan looks at him like, nah, this ain't right. And that dude's family shouldn't have to suffer because of Logan. So he helps the guy up and he tells him get out of his way and go home. And Logan's like, if your sister ain't already dead, I'll find her. That's a promise. So he's still gonna try and help this guy. But also, just based on the fact that dude is even here, this tells Logan that Sabretooth has been watching him, and Sabretooth wants Logan to know that he's watching. So after he gets this guy to leave, Logan continues on his way, and he says, my gut tells me I'm close to him now, but Sabretooth's actual scent is hard to follow. He's masking it somehow, playing cat and mouse. I ain't exactly the best there is at hiding my emotions. See what you did there, Logan? And he's like probably wearing the pain and confusion of wandering these old halls right on my face. And that sick freak is watching and loving it. And Logan's not lying, because he's going through all types of emotional responses at every turn here. And we see it again when the chandelier nearly drops on him, because this causes him to think back to a time before TVs, magazines, or cell phones, where something like this chandelier was the visual entertainment. And looking at it now, Logan remembers lying on the floor and eating berries that he just picked while staring up at the twinkling glass patterns for hours, until his mother scolded him for acting like an animal. And he continues thinking to himself like, wonder what she'd think of me now. Suppose part of why I'm so damn angry all the time is because part of me's been wondering that since the invention of the airplane. And tonight, I finally find out. Then he's like, as if in response to my thoughts, scents hit me from upstairs. Old satin and blood, my mother's favorite ball gown. as he sees a piece of it laying on the stairs, but then when he walks around and looks up, he sees a different girl wearing it, and just based on her features and her scent being very similar to that guy from the bar, Logan could tell right away that this was his sister. And to add a little something extra, Sabretooth clawed in the words, "Your fault," just behind her. And Logan sees this as a clear tactic from Sabretooth to try to get in his head as a way to torture him with guilt, but Logan's just like, "I'd do that on my own just fine." And just after this, when he goes upstairs, he hears voices saying, "You godforsaken animal, you killed her," just before he goes up there and sees what appears to be the ghosts of John Howlett and Thomas Logan, with John Howlett being the man that Logan thought was his father for most of his childhood, who was eventually shot and killed by Thomas Logan, his actual biological father, who was the groundskeeper that was having an affair with Thomas's wife, Elizabeth Howlett. So now Logan's like, they died on the same night, over 100 years ago, and now neither has a scent. Looks like Sabretooth didn't just come back from the dead, he brought company. But I'm the last of the Howletts, which makes this my house, whatever the paperwork might say. That means it's my job to welcome company. But then when Logan tries to take a slice out of these guys, he's just like incorporeal. Should have guessed. But then he makes the mistake of believing, since they're not made of anything physical or tangible, that they can't touch him either. And for a moment, Logan's like, hey, I'm usually good at breaking holds because he's 5'3", so a lot of the time he can wiggle out of something. But this right here, this right here, he's not able to get out of it. And Logan will be the first to admit that he's not an expert in the occult. He doesn't get it. So he doesn't know if they're ghosts or whatever they are, but what he does know is that he can feel them draining the life out of him, and it's faster than his healing factor can recover. So all he can think about in this moment, which might be his last, is how his mother was nearby. She said she was in trouble, and he picked up her scent, a living scent. So now he's thinking whatever trouble his mother's in, he's not gonna make it, and that he failed her. And he's barely able to get the words out saying, "Mother, I'm sorry." And that's when a voice from down the hall says, "Please don't hurt him. Please show mercy. He's my only living son." And that's where the ghosts of daddy and stepdaddy past let him go. And Logan is so focused on that voice, the one asking them to show mercy, saying how he was its only living son. And he knows without a doubt that it was his mother. So after he quickly recovers from the whole life draining thing, Logan races to that door. And now he's thinking to himself like, man, this whole time I've been focused on the hunt, or really just getting here. To the point where Logan hasn't even thought about what he's gonna say to his mother. And at one point he's like, do I start with a long time no see? Then he's like, should I go straight into the, it's messed up, you hated me so much, you had to off yourself. So it's like he really just doesn't know where to start. And so eventually he's like, well, I probably should just start with hi. But by the time he makes it to the door and her scent's growing stronger, when he goes in, he's speechless. He can't find any words at all. And eventually he steps in closer to get her out of her constraints as he looks to her and says, I've got you. But while he's helping her up, he's thinking to himself like, this is no ghost, this is flesh and blood. She's really here. And that's where he notices the cuts on her face. But she just tells him later, before saying, James, is that you? Which has him in his feelings again because he hasn't been called that name in a long time. But right when he's helping her up, everything goes dark. And usually Logan can see in the dark, but this is different. And we'll find out why down the line. But right now, with everything being dark, Logan picks up a scent and he knows it's Sabretooth. So Logan calls him out and he's like, you think you could hide from me? Only to have Sabretooth tell him, nobody's hiding. I owe you a death. And tonight, I'm gonna pay you back double. As the lights come back and Logan sees Sabretooth standing over his mother. So yeah, next week when we pick this back up, we're gonna talk about what exactly is happening here. So until then, I will say if you don't want spoilers, do be careful in the comments, cause I'm sure somebody's gonna just put it out there. So there's that. But if you enjoyed the video, do be sure to drop a like and let me know what you think about Wolverine going back to his old home, seeing his mother, as well as the return of Sabretooth. Cause when this comes back, it's gonna be one crazy, emotional roller coaster. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/DopeSpill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. All right, later.